Hey there, Truthful. Let's get intimate. Truthful, tell it Tuesday. Sometimes we have to confront our past. We have to dig deep down into experiences and traumas and stories that we have lived in our lives, and especially because we've allowed them to define who we are and dictate the direction our life has taken. So my intention for doing this today is to send out loving vibes to anyone else out there who can relate to the story I'm about to tell. I'm about to go deep. And I kind of joke and I'll say we're going bulldozer deep. We're going really deep down into the trenches today. So if you're out there and you have a deep trauma that you've experienced in your life, and you know of other people who have experienced something they seem to be stuck in, can't get out of, can't move forward from, their lives are just living in the past. They're stuck. They're reliving the past, even. My challenge to all of you today is to go over to the share button. Don't just share it to your page. I want you to barrage it. Go down, invite anybody and everybody, because this is all about spreading the love. And the only way we can all heal is through working on healing ourselves. And when I speak and tell this story, it's very possible I touch someone out there who is inspired enough to recognize how the story is no longer serving them and how they can finally move forward, even step by step. Because recognizing it, owning it, identifying, embracing it is so important. We all have an inner child. It doesn't ever go away because it's the purest form of who we are. And sometimes that inner child feels neglected, wants to be seen and heard. So, today I'm tapping deep into my inner child and sharing with you something that I've never said, definitely not on camera, not live. And some people who do know me do know my story, do know what I've experienced in some of my past. I'm not ashamed of it like I was for a very long time of my life. I'm not afraid of it. I have made peace. It does touch my heart. It had dictated a lot of bad behavior, a lot of reaction, a lot of I want justice, a lot of motherly wanting to protect others, to want to step in there and take care of people who couldn't be able to take care of themselves. And especially children, who we all know are so pure and innocent. Because we don't want to see children harmed in any way. And when we do, it touches something in us deep, especially those of us who've been there. If you see a child harmed, you want to protect them. But something in my story I am able to make peace about is to recognize that sometimes it's just part of the path and the experience that creates the love and compassion for others. That we don't need to reach out and fix everybody else because it's shaping their lives. It's part of their soul's experience. Their soul had a certain path it decided to have upon this life. And it's not how we respond or react, but just allow, embrace, and nurture. So if you're somebody out there who's ever been abused, I forgot the tissues. Grab your box of tissues, please. If you've ever been abused or ever been in a situation where you felt ashamed when you were really innocent, that it's time, and you haven't touched it yet and haven't healed it yet, it's time to embrace your inner child and remind it that it's okay. You are perfect just the way you are. And because you were innocent doesn't make you responsible for the other person's actions. Doesn't make you any less than who you are. And it's time to embrace self-love and recognize you are perfectly beautiful. You are love. There's nothing more that you need than to be there for yourself. Don't be ashamed. Don't carry any more shame. I did it for many years, and all it did was cause more pain and suffering, because when we don't feel worthy and we feel shamed or ashamed, whether internal or external forces making us feel that way, what it really does is it causes us to have unhealthy behavior, to go into patterns that don't serve us, but in fact are reliving the experience. So, if you're just joining now, I want you to hit that share button, and I want you to invite as many friends as you can, because sharing is caring, and you don't know whose life you may touch today. The story I'm about to share, and for some of you, you may already know me. You may know this story, but you don't know all of the story. And if I could get a little feedback on if you can hear me well, and if you can see me all right. I love you all. Thank you for showing up. This is a really big piece of me, a big part of who I am, who I became, not who I am. So when I was growing up, I grew up in Massachusetts for the good portion of my childhood, up until, the crime was getting bad and my parents decided it was too much. Thank you, Rachel. Crime was getting really bad in Massachusetts. I don't know. We had a great big family of many grandchildren. My mother was the middle of, at the time, 9. And I really loved being with my family. And thank you, Yvette. And I really loved being with my cousins, so it was hard when we moved away. As many people know, to be with the people you know, the family, and to me family matters most, was difficult to move away from them because I lost that connection. We were so far away, we didn't see them every day anymore. My cousin Danielle and I were so close that I didn't even want to leave her house. I tried to hide, thinking my mother wouldn't notice. And everything shifted and changed. We moved to Holton, Maine. Very small town, last exit on 95 before you hit the Canadian border to Woodstock, Canada. And thank you, Carl. My parents felt that it would be better to raise us in the country. I know my mother had her own reasons. And my dad got us this home in the country where we had all sorts of chickens, and we had a pony at one point and a goat. Oh my gosh, so funny. His name was Jake. He was crazy. A couple pigs and lots of land to roam, and fresh fruits and vegetables growing from the German lady who had planted them prior to, who lived there before us. So it was kind of nice because us children, we were very easy to entertain ourselves. All three of us got along. We were all, we were each other's peers at that time before we went to school and the influence of other kids, right? And my father had a restaurant. He started a pizzeria called Bellamia's Pizza and Subs. And my dad was an amazing, always was, always is, an amazing cook. And yeah, he had a pizzeria, made the best steak and cheese subs, made the best pizzas. So I grew up with food, right? Sharing love. So my dad's way to share love was at the time was and still is always about what he makes from his heart, his food. But also the playfulness, the joy, the jumping up and down on the bed when we were kids. And I'm not coming through. You might need to restart your phone or the app because I had to do that last night. So yeah, I'd be wearing my cotton tights and my dad would pull us down and we'd laugh and laugh and laugh and jump up and down on the bed, and he'd put a knot in them. And as children, I couldn't get the knot out. It was kind of tight for me as a child. And I'd be like, but Dad, and I'd be jumping up and down, and then I'd keep on going, and then he'd pull the knot, but it was so much fun. My dad was really wonderful with us. And my mom too. I mean, we grew up in a house full of dancing and singing, and both of them listened to amazing music. And my mother was so intelligent reading these. She had 10, 20 books going at a time. My mom was just incredibly phenomenal and knowledgeable. And even stuff that today I look back on and realize how avant-garde she was, how much she was involved and forward-moving, forward-thinking. But me as a child, just that was normal, and I embrace it now because it makes sense, right? But there were also things there were times when Mom wasn't around and us children were running around and my dad was busy with work, with the business. And we were very friendly kids. We said hi to everybody. We'd walk around the town because it was small. And we'd go into different shops and we'd say hi and we introduce ourselves and they got used to us. So we'd go around and socialize that way. And I don't even remember what exactly or how exactly it happened, but I remember my sister, the middle sister, Lita, who I love dearly. First, when we lived in East Boston, we had a house. No, in East Boston we had a brownstone, but my parents also had us in a house in Dorchester. It was a beautiful old Victorian, and I remembered the stained glass window. That was something I really just loved, stained glass. I don't know. And we were on the top floor, and my sister Lita and I were jumping up and down, so I jumped back in time here. There was this cardboard or something over a hole, and I don't know why, but I decided, let's jump up and down on this piece of particle board or wood, or it wasn't wood because it wasn't sturdy. It must have been some form of cardboard, but there was a hole underneath it. And we're jumping and laughing and playing, and then it gave way. And for whatever reason, and I don't even remember, it happened so quickly, and I was so young. I was maybe 5, maybe even younger. And it gave way, and Lita fell through. All the way down to the floor, on the very bottom floor. And they had to take her to the hospital. I don't remember all the details. So she ended up having a head injury as a result. And it makes a little bit more sense over time when you look back on things. But, I mean, I felt responsible and bad because I didn't know. I didn't do it on purpose. I said, jump, Lita, jump. And I still remember her face. She was jumping up and she had this big smile on her face. And then, fortunately, that particular day, that was where the car seat would be, right at the portion right near the stairs, and she didn't hit it. So, but my father said that they told her told them that she was okay to go home and that she was all right, but clearly she had a concussion, and it was something that could have caused some serious brain trauma because she was young. There's only a few years, not even a full 2 years between me and Lita, and less than 4 years between me and my youngest, Lori. So there's three of us. And I'll be 43 August 1st, and my other two sisters are 41 and 39. So, moving back up to Maine, so we would walk around town, and my sister Lita had come up to me and Lori. I don't know how we separated, but a lot of times we were always together. We'd take care of one another, and I was very protective as an older sister. And my sister said to me and Lori, she said, "There's this guy. You have to meet him. He gives us little gifts if, you do stuff." And I didn't know what that meant exactly, but for whatever reason, children are easily persuaded when it comes to attention, when they're seeking it. But more so when you give them something. Haven't you seen a child when you give them a gift? Even if it's the gift of your time, really, they get excited. So it was an antique store, it was a thrift store. And my sisters and I went in, and there was this man, and it was really his mother's place. And we went in, and he took us to the back room. And in the back room, there were all of these pornographic magazines and boxes and stuff. He closed the shop, and he closed the doors, and proceeded to kind of try to introduce us to what was going on back there. And in the corner, he placed my sister Lita up on a box in the corner and proceeded to show us by penetrating her in a way that I was like mortified, because I didn't feel like that was something I ever wanted with my body done. But to witness it, I was like, oh my gosh, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right at all. It was probably 1983 or 4, because I think it was slushy out. Maybe there was some snow. And I don't even remember how old I was. 7 or 8 maybe. And I just knew better. And so then he wanted to do the same to me, and I wouldn't allow him. He did do some other things, and I felt very much ashamed for even allowing him to touch me. I didn't allow him to penetrate me or put anything of his physical body inside of me, because I was like, no, I don't want that. But it was gross, and it was shameful for me, and I felt so embarrassed and so ashamed that I even allowed it as a young child, and held that for many, many years. But the hardest part was when we left that room, and he did what he did to my little sister. It was the hardest thing to watch, because she was the youngest and the most innocent of the three of us. And the window, a friend of my father's, and her cousin or her nephew was with her, and actually peeped in the window and saw what was going on. I was not 100% fully aware of that. I think I was in such shock and stunned. I couldn't believe, and I know I said stop, and my sister was crying. I know she didn't allow that. I know it was done to her and forced. And before we left the store, we picked out our items, and we immediately went back to my dad's restaurant, which was literally just a couple doors down the street, down the walk. I mean, not even a couple hundred yards. And I went back and I told Amy, the friend that saw what happened, and she told my father. And my father flipped out, and arguing ensued. I don't even remember what happened beyond that, because from that point on, my family fell apart, even more so, because I had seen my parents not happy with each other, but it didn't seem that bad. But watching my parents fight and fight and fight about whose fault it was the hardest thing to watch as a child, because we were already ashamed and felt like it was our fault. And to top that off, how do you heal from it? My mother, for many years of our lives, would say, and I remembered I was a little child, I remembered her saying, I never want what happened to me as a child to happen to you children. And as a result of that, if anybody knows how you can manifest, I witnessed it. She had had something in her life happen that was very similar, or it would never have happened. When this is the importance of healing, if you don't heal it, if you don't confront it and work on yourself, you will repeat it, and legacy will be continued. You will pass it on, especially if you're so stuck on it and so resistant to it. I didn't know what to do. Our situation was weird. Going to school felt weird. My mother and my father decided to take us out of St. Mary's Catholic school that I was going to. And now, because we lived in Hodgson anyway, we had to go to the elementary school. And I was in 5th grade. And when things started coming out, because my parents, of course, took legal action, called the cops, he was detained. It felt like reliving it, but then some. It was even more painful because investigators, detectives came to the school. I don't blame my parents for any of that. That part, personally, it was so intrusive. It was a different time. Today, things are so different. I can't even say. I mean, children really are smarter than you give them credit for. I felt insulted by it. I felt like, who are you to talk to me? And my first experience of this really, again, it triggered me hard, because here I was called to the principal's office. And as I walk into the principal's office, there's my youngest sister by herself in the principal's office with the principal sitting at his desk and 2 men interrogating this little girl with the doll. I don't know what's more insulting. First off, you've got a young girl with nobody to console her, to being there alone with 3 men after what transpired, with a doll. Show me where he touched you. I mean, it's disgusting. There was no sensitivity in that. There was no, the child needs to have somebody loving to support this situation involved in the room. I was so pissed off. And I was embarrassed too, because here they were at the school, so all the friends and all the people in the school, it's a small town. And the gossip begins. And I remember going in there and them asking me, and I was a Spitfire kid. I did not appreciate it. I found it to be even grosser to be asked these types of questions by these individuals, almost feeling like, honestly, they kind of get off on the sexual stuff. I don't know. But it wasn't the first time. It was the last time they came to the school. It was even more embarrassing because the principal got to witness it. So now here's a principal who's looking at me totally different. And as a child, it's hard to be in that environment. Your friends are walking by the principal's office or finding out you've been called. Everybody knows when you get called to the principal's office, everybody wants to know why. And as a result of that, this small town now had this story, and I don't even know what was passed around. I just know that we felt ostracized as children. There were many kids that weren't allowed to hang out with us. We weren't invited to parties, probably when we needed it the most. It was like the family received the scarlet letter and nobody wanted to get involved with us. When in reality, we were victimized by somebody who took advantage of the pureness of us children. Doesn't make my parents bad parents. In fact, even they had their who was at fault at why that we were even in the situation we were in. And that's irrelevant. At that time, the thing we needed the most was the bond, was the unity, the coming together and somebody to say, it's going to be okay. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Somebody did that to you and took advantage of your purity and your loving nature. It's hard to recover from an experience that totally sucks your self-worth and self-esteem out of you. And the thing that children need the most is someone to remind them how special they are. And that the person who had the problem wasn't them. And that they didn't lose control of the situation. And it's okay to trust yourself. And to continue trusting yourself. And that just to recognize that there are people out there who will take advantage of you, but as long as you trust yourself, you can learn who those people are. Because true trust in self makes it easier to discern those around you who have the best intentions for you. I remember that day my mother came to pick me up from school. I don't know why I had to stay later. But she drove up and I was livid. I had a look of I could kill on my face. And my mother was even more pissed off because she didn't know about all that transpired. She got mad at my dad, claiming that he allowed them to come to the school. And it became another fight, as were there many fights as a result of this situation. It literally broke my parents up because my mother was reliving whatever had transpired in her life. And I'm going to be honest, I still don't know to this day what the story is or what she experienced. Because the unfortunate nature of all of this is that my mother hasn't healed from her past. I don't know what it is. She's always been looking for the perfect time to sit down and have the conversation with us of what transpired.